It's amazing. I'll never forget that morning. Of course, it had rained a couple of days, and we noticed the dishes was full of water, but they wasn't to the point where they was covering the street. So I went on to work. It wasn't a good 3-4 hours. Got a phone call that the water was coming into Hyde Park, unbelievable, and it was flooded. So when I got back out here, water was coming from all directions. It looked like a big ocean out here, and of course they had to get boats and rescue people to come get the families out. Of course, my family was already out by the time I got here.
When that water came into my house, and a lot of clothes I had to throw away because they didn't smell good. At the time, I didn't know that the flood had got two of my clothes because, see, I had them like my winter clothes packed in boxes. And when I got ready to go get them, they had something like a film over them.
I remember when the flood water did come in, and especially my mom, because she lived on Dan Bowes down here. And the water got in her house at least, I'm just going to say about at least 2-3 feet. And the smell was unbearable. It was already, the water just smelled bad, but when it decided, it was the most terrible smell you want to imagine inside the house. I can't even describe it. It smelled like chemical, it smelled like oil, it smelled like gas. It just had all kind of different smell to it. And of course, it left a terrible stain on the wall in her house.
Before I moved out from out here, we lived in the area where there was a lot of water, and people used to ride boats from different streets out here because when it rained, it totally flooded Hyde Park. Because Leona Street wasn't out here when I was here, so it was from Walnut Street to Goldenrod Street, this street here. So when it rained, it totally flooded the whole area. And I lived on Walnut Street at the first house of Walnut Street. So a lot of people used to do the boats and bring on Walnut Street and leave them in our yard because it was just like a little spot right on the corner because we were like on a little hill right on the corner. And they would leave their boats in there until they come back from work or wherever they had to go in the afternoon.
We had to move out and go stay with somebody else. We had to go out on boats. We had our own little boat we kept for water. So we used to go out on that and go different people's houses and stay till the flood succeed and everything subside. And then we'll come back and start all over again. One time it got so bad when a real big flood came through, I forget what year that was, but the dams and thing was overflowing and some dam was busting. So we really was in a mess this time because water was all up to the kitchen table or higher.
And you must realize, Hyde Park has all open ditches. And as the water would flow in, and we would have to, especially during the season of a lot of rain and flooding, that these ditches would overflow. And in order to get out, we used to have an old paddle boat. And I still have that boat even as today because it's a reminder of how we had to travel during this time. And just getting in and out of Hyde Park meant that somebody had to transport them by boat. It was just that thick.
And even with the flooding problems in Hyde Park and the flooding, with us going out in boats and having to evacuate and having a major flood in 1990, our county and our city does not even list us as a flood-prone area. People are not even told, from what I understand from talk to me, they're not even told that this area is prone to flooding. And I think that's a disgrace. It's unfair to people who would want to move in this area.
But every time it rains, it floods and the ditches stop all up. You have to wade, get to your car, you have to wade the water and stuff. It's like a swamp area.
And one of the things I really hated when I was growing up, a lot of people used to say to me, "You live in Hyde Park?" I said, "Yeah." Golly, I wouldn't live out there with all that water and stuff. But what people fail to realize, when you're young, you live where your parents put you.
One thing about Hyde Park and describing it to people who are not familiar with its location, we have to remember that Hyde Park is like a saucer. And it has its rim around it. Water comes in to Hyde Park from west to east. It travels in the way the river would pull its migration into the earth. And when it comes in through the inlets from Southernwood Piedmont and from the way of the Gordon Highway, it would come in and settle in Hyde Park.
And they come around each one because there's nowhere to let the water out. Because once the water overflow, it goes in a circle. It come right back to you, it go to her, it go to him, it go to me.
Tomorrow morning when you get ready to have your cup of coffee, you set your cup in that saucer. Even when you spill your coffee, it stays in the saucer because it can't go anywhere. And that's how it is with Hyde Park. The water just couldn't go anywhere.
If they don't clean the dishes out, the water stays there. You can go by there now. It just recently rained. It's got some water in it now. And the rainwater makes the foul odor get louder. It is real awful.
A number of other plants that produce toxins moved into the community or adjacent to the community. And they began to put in metal contaminants, zinc, and they put in a lot of iron ore. They put in a lot of lead, a lot of contaminants that went now into the ground and into the groundwater. And when it floods, in this known history of the flooding of this community, it raises the level of the underground water table to a point that it recontaminates the soil that had previously been unearthed and moved out as a part of a cleanup effort. So it's perpetual. It's a malignancy that is going to perpetuate itself with just the natural rain that comes down.
And you have to know when it eventually resolved itself or settled into the ground, it became what we were drinking. It became a part of our crops because we were able then to have seasonal crops being grown in Hyde Park. Yes, we were on well water and we pumped our water for drinking as well as for the animals that we had. So we had a double exposure to these chemicals which were coming in by the way of flooding. And today, it still floods.
The low-lying posture of the community itself makes it prone to flooding. And so if you can't address the flooding problem, you can't address the problem of recontamination. And so you have a community that is now captive to this malignant environment that's just geared toward re-exposing the community to a contaminant that's deadly.